Maybe you're new to construction work, or maybe you've got some experience but no formal safety training. This program is a construction safety orientation which can give you the knowledge to keep you from getting hurt on the job.
Hello, my name is Bob Sennett. On the job site, my nickname is Safety Bob. I've been a construction safety professional for over 30 years. I've seen many safety improvements over the years. Unfortunately, one constant remains. New or inexperienced workers, maybe workers like you, still get hurt on the job site way too often. So let's talk safety training. And let me start with two important points. Point number one, your job is dangerous. Nearly 1,000 workers were killed on construction job sites last year. That means, on average, 3 workers were killed on job sites every day. And point number two, you are the person most responsible for your personal safety.
Not your company, not some government safety inspector, not even your supervisor. They can all help you, but always remember, you are the person most responsible for your own personal safety. But you can be careless and unsafe too. Over 8 out of every 10 construction accidents are caused by employee error. You'll see a number of those unsafe workers in this program, each marked with a red X.
Those workers don't work at your job site or for your company. Those workers are taking some safety shortcuts and working unsafely. That kind of behavior is not allowed at your job site or for your company. And those scenes are only shown in this program as an example for you of the kind of behavior that gets construction workers hurt or even killed. So don't take that safety shortcut. Think safety before you act, or you may be one of the 3 workers who won't go home today.
I can't go over all the safety standards or all your company safety rules in this program, but I will discuss the key areas of construction safety to help you always to work safely on the job site.
And the first area I'll discuss is personal protective equipment, or PPE as it's sometimes called.
Wearing your PPE is far more important than you might think. First, it's for your personal protection. Actually, PPE is often your last defense against injury. You need to always wear it, just in case the unthinkable happens, which it did once when I was on a job site in the low country of South Carolina. A large auger working on that site suddenly and unexpectedly just broke, then fell directly into a group of construction workers, all of who got out of the way, except one. The auger hit that worker hard and fast and struck the side and back of his hard hat. EMTs were immediately called, and the ambulance arrived in less than 5 minutes.
But this story has a happy ending. That 2-ton auger hit the side and the back of that worker's hard hat, and that hard hat saved his life. Amazingly, that worker was back on the job site and back to work the very next day. So wear your PPE. One day your PPE might save your life too.
And on the construction site, your PPE should start with your hard hat. It protects you from head injuries. You need to wear it at all times. And the same is true for safety glasses. Wear your safety glasses all the time while on site. They protect your eyes and your most precious sense of sight. Over 2,000 workers injure their eyes on the job every day.
Each of you watching now, close your eyes for just a moment and listen to my next line. Is that the way you want to go through life, without your sense of sight?
Wear your hard hat, wear your safety glasses, wear them all the time on the job site. Putting on this equipment before work each day should be habit and as natural as putting on your pants each morning. Wear your PPE. Your protection and even your future livelihood may depend on you wearing your personal protective equipment.
I've talked about hard hats and safety glasses, but there are many other types of PPE that you might need depending on your type of work.
They include safety vest, steel-toed boots, dust mask and respirators, face shields, hearing protection, welding and cutting protection, proper job site clothing, work gloves, and many more. Wear your PPE every time. Spare me the excuses like it's too hot or too uncomfortable or this job will only take a second. Your life can change in a second. Do it right Do it safely and let your PPE protect you every time.
Now I'll talk about the specific hazards you'll face on the job site and how you can prepare yourself and always work safely despite those hazards. The first hazard pertains to any work you'll do below ground. Of course, I'm referring to excavation and trenching. First and foremost, know this.
Working inside a trench or an excavation is one of the most dangerous places on any construction site. An average cubic yard of dirt weighs over 2,000 pounds. So if that trench wall caves in, that soil will crush anything in its way.
It's a competent person's job to determine soil type on your project and then determine what to do in each trench or excavation to ensure all workers on site are safe.
Protection methods include sloping back the soil so there's no chance of cave-in. Stable soil, referred to as type A, must be sloped back on a ratio of 3/4 to 1. Type B soil is not quite as stable and must be sloped back on a 1-to-1 ratio. And finally, the least stable and most dangerous soil is referred to as type C soil. This soil must be protected or sloped back at least on a ratio of 1.5 to 1, so there's no danger of cave-in. When there's not enough room to slope back a trench or excavation, a trench box or some other type of protection like shoring or bracing must be used. You'll also need an adequate ladder or sloped ramp access in and out of trenches or excavations. And all spoil piles must be placed at least 2 feet away from the edge of trenches or excavations.
Always remember, trenches and excavations are dangerous. On average, one worker is killed nearly every week in a trench cave-in.
So don't ever work in a trench or excavation that's a danger to cave in. Whether you slope it, shore it, bench it, brace it, or use a trench box, do something. Make sure your trenches and excavations are safe. Do it right, do it safely, or that trench might become an early grave.
Now let's switch gears and talk about an item that's used on most construction job sites: ladders.
Ladders are used on nearly every job site, but unfortunately, they're also misused. An unsafe action, which is all too often very deadly. Last year alone, over 125 construction workers were killed from falls off ladders.
And sadly, most of those deaths could have easily been prevented. So let's talk ladder safety basics.
First, inspect your ladder before using it. If the ladder is damaged in any way, don't use that ladder. Next, make sure your ladder is set up level and on stable ground before you climb. And when setting up a step ladder, open the ladder fully and lock the arms in place. Don't use a step ladder leaned up against a wall. It could easily kick out. When using a straight or extension ladder, place it with the ladder extending 3 feet above the upper landing, then climb to the top and secure or tie off that ladder. And always climb ladders face first, using 3 points of contact on the ladder at all times. Your 2 arms and 2 feet are your 4 points of contact. So when climbing a ladder, 3 of those 4 should always be in contact with the ladder. And always use the right ladder for the job. If you need an 8-foot step ladder, don't use a 6-foot step ladder. And don't stand on the top of a step ladder. It's not allowed and it's real dangerous. Don't do it, not even for a second.
Using ladders safely isn't really difficult. What's difficult is recovering from a fall from a ladder.
So don't take chances on ladders. Chances like climbing with too many tools or materials, or working off the top of a step ladder, or leaning out too far to the side of a ladder.
So do it right, do it safely, and live to climb that ladder another day.
Now let's talk about working safely on another elevated surface, scaffolding. First, scaffold construction or teardown must be supervised by a qualified person. All scaffolding needs to be level and stable, with poles placed on base plates, mud sills, or adequate firm foundation. All scaffold sections must be pinned with cross braces in place before working on the scaffold, and all scaffold work areas or platforms must be fully decked. That means anywhere a worker is standing or doing any work on a scaffold, that area must be fully decked or fully planked. You can't climb the cross braces. You've got to use some sort of ladder. Many scaffold systems have ladders built in, but if they don't, use an extension ladder and tie it off to access your scaffold work area. But let's talk about where most scaffolding safety violations and accidents occur, and that's the lack of fall protection. For your safety, your scaffolding needs fall protection. Most use guardrails and midrails, but remember, fall protection is needed on scaffold even at those areas where you load or unload materials. And you can't stand on block, brick, or even a step ladder while on a scaffold, nor can you stand on a rolling scaffold unless the wheels are locked. Both are very dangerous. Scaffolding and workers on scaffold are one of the first places safety inspectors like me look for violations on the job site. They're one of the first places because often I find more safety violations on scaffolds and workers on scaffolds than any other place on the job site. That means way too many of you are taking chances working on scaffolding and not working safely. Whether it's climbing X-braces or ignoring the need for scaffold fall protection rails and mid-rails. These are chances that can get you hurt or worse. So do it right, do it safely, set up your scaffolding properly with all the necessary fall protection rails and mid-rails, and make working on that scaffolding as safe as working on solid ground. Let's move from scaffolding now, and I'll talk about other fall protection that you'll need on the job site. Fall protection should be used anywhere on the job site where you can suffer a fall. That includes building or roof edges, steel erection, aerial lifts, even holes and skylights, just to name a few. And there are several types of fall protection, but three are most widely used. The first are guardrails and mid-rails, usually placed directly in front of a fall hazard. Remember, these rails have to be strong enough to keep a man from falling. Another option is a personal fall protection system, which includes a harness, a lanyard, and a suitable tie-off point. Make sure you know how to properly wear your personal fall protection. But wearing a fall protection harness doesn't do you any good if you don't tie off. I've inspected all too many projects where I see workers up high wearing their fall protection harnesses, but they're not tied to anything. You're not fooling anyone, but you might do yourself great harm. Always remember, that harness will do you no good unless you're tied off. And your tie-off anchorage has to be strong enough. Regulations say strong enough to hold 5,000 pounds. So always tie off to something strong. And finally, the third fall protection option I'll discuss are warning lines. Warning lines are used mostly on roofs to keep workers a safe distance from the edge of the roof. So these lines should be placed at least 6 feet away from the roof edge. But keep in mind, warning lines are not to be crossed unless that worker who goes outside the warning line is properly tied off. In reality, fall protection is all about planning ahead and always being diligent to use some type of fall protection. I can't tell you how many times I've heard the sorry excuse, "I got nothing to tie off to." That's not acceptable. Figure it out before you start work. Bottom line, if you're working near some type of fall exposure, like the edge of this building, you need some type of fall protection. Because falls on construction sites kill more workers than any other type of accident. So do it right, do it safely, and plan ahead and protect yourself with fall protection every time you need to on the job site. Electrical power. It's often called the silent killer. On the job site, electrical power is almost always required, but all too often misused. Making matters worse, most construction workers don't have any appreciation for the kind of injury that an electrical shock can deliver.
So let's talk electrical safety, and I'll focus on how and where you might be in danger on the job site. That is, anytime you're working with or near electrical power.
First, remember, all site electrical power needs to be grounded and always protected with ground fault circuit interrupters, called GFCIs for short.
A GFCI is a fast-acting circuit which, if it senses any electrical imbalance at all, it immediately shuts off the power, which could save your life.
And all electrical panels on site need to be safe too. They should have protective covers, and be careful. Openings around the edges might expose you to energized electrical parts, especially dangerous if you're carrying tools or materials. And if you see open spaces in a panel, stay clear. That open space is real dangerous. Notify someone on site so a qualified electrician can be called to reinstall those circuits or place socket covers over those open spaces. Now let's talk about how most of us get electrical power on the job site, through extension cords. First, construction extension cords must be rated heavy duty, and all cords must be in good condition. And taped or splice cords are not in good condition. These should be replaced. Extension cords always need a ground prong. A cord lacking a ground is one of the most common safety violations I find on the job site. So remember, if the extension cord you're about to use doesn't have a ground prong, don't use it. And cords on the job site need to be located where they won't get damaged. Don't stretch a cord across a site road unless it's protected. Be careful stretching cords around corners, through doorways, or setting them down in water. And don't make your cord a trip hazard, especially on or near any stairs. Now let's discuss electrical rooms on construction sites. These rooms should be kept locked, with only electrical workers or supervisory employees allowed in, and the doors should always have warning labels posted. Most of you have no business being in these rooms, so don't go in, and especially don't use them for storage. It's an invitation for disaster. My last point involves power lines. It's critical you keep equipment or materials at least 20 feet away from all power lines.
And always realize, if you come too close to those power lines, that electricity could arc. And if you touch those power lines, well, most don't survive such an incident. You know the value of electricity on the job site. Know also the tremendous power of electricity, and that power can kill a man in an instant. So do it right, do it safely, and don't be shocked by the silent killer. The last topics I'll discuss concern general safety items. Items like the importance of housekeeping, working with your tools safely, proper lifting techniques, working on or around heavy equipment, and using aerial lifts safely.
Let's start with housekeeping. Remember, safety and housekeeping go hand in hand on the job site. Whether it's pounding down nails, eliminating trip hazards or fire hazards, or just a way to stay better organized, your clean job will not only be a safer job, but far more productive. Next, always use your tools safely. Whether they're power tools or hand tools, first inspect them before use. If they're not in good condition, don't use them. Either dispose them or tag them out of service until that tool can be fixed. And no safety orientation would be complete without discussing proper lifting techniques, as all too many construction workers still injure their backs every year. Back injuries happen because many workers instinctively and incorrectly use their backs to lift and not their legs. And after making this mistake and lifting this way many, many times, their back finally gives way.
Don't kid yourselves. Back injuries cause real pain and can change your life. So the most important thing I can tell you about lifting safety isn't how to lift safely, because most of you already know that. It's to always remember to lift safely, and lift safely each and every time.
Now let's briefly discuss aerial and scissor lift safety. First, workers on any aerial lift should use fall protection and tie off in that lift at all times. Also, you should inspect your aerial or scissor lift each day before use, and you should be safety trained to specifically operate that equipment. Be extra careful when moving aerial or scissor lifts. Use a spotter if you need to. Both overhead and floor hazards cause many aerial or scissor lift accidents. Be careful when operating this equipment. If your job is to operate heavy equipment, you need to be trained and authorized to operate that equipment. And always inspect your equipment before using it each day. That includes tires, brakes, other mechanical items, and most heavy equipment also needs a fire extinguisher, a horn, and a working backup alarm. And be careful climbing up and down into your equipment. Always use 3 points of contact when you climb. Remember, this type of accident is the most common accident suffered by equipment operators. And lastly, but most important, if your equipment has a seat belt, always use that seat belt. Seat belt use, or the lack of it, is still a constant safety problem at the construction job site. And it's not just heavy equipment. Vehicle crashes involving construction workers are the industry's most expensive type of injury. They're the most expensive because many involved in those accidents were not wearing seat belts and suffer very serious injuries. Wear your seat belt, whether you're on the job or off. Make it a habit for you and your family. It's a surefire way to add years to your life.
So there you have it. I've talked about PPE, excavation and trenching, ladder safety, scaffolding safety, fall protection, electrical safety, and a number of other general safety items. But our orientation isn't complete without talking about the one item that can keep you safer more than any other, and that's your attitude. Because despite the hazards and the dangers around you on construction sites, construction workers like you can work safely.
Forget about the excuses, like I'm in a hurry, or I've always done it that way before, or my personal favorite, give me 5 minutes to get this done, and then I'll work safe. Excuses will only get you hurt.
Remember, working safely depends on your attitude, and with a positive attitude toward safety, you can save yourself from injury or worse. And with that positive attitude and knowledge of the hazards around you, you can make the job site a safer place. Do it right, do it safely, and go home from the job site each day healthy and whole. Thank you for listening, and God bless you.